This is Retro Sports Radio. Visit RetroSeasons.com for more sports history.
Good evening, baseball fans from coast to coast. This is George Hogan speaking from New York's famous Times Square. Tonight, WOR Special Features Division brings you a bird's-eye view of New York on the eve of what promises to be the most exciting World Series in the history of the game. As you know, the play-by-play account of the series between the Dodgers and the Yankees will be brought to you exclusively over the Mutual Network beginning at 1:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. Now, let's try to give you a brief description of Manhattan tonight. Here in Times Square, the great city of light is definitely in full bloom. New York is dressed in its usual costume of myriad of lights that flicker out a welcome to the thousands that have come from cities and hamlets dotting every state in the Union. Parading past our mutual microphones are visitors who have passed across America from the West Coast, stopped in from Skowhegan, Maine, Kansas City, New Orleans, St. Petersburg, Florida, Buffalo, Chicago, Duluth, around the good old USA. We all know why they're here. This week, New York is the scene of two of the world's greatest features. Last night, the world's heavyweight battle, and tomorrow afternoon at Yankee Stadium, the great World Series. It's a bang-up week, packed full of thrills. $2, and you can look at your mutual station to bring it to you. On this baseball preview tonight, we're swinging around the town the points of interest to see how hepped up this little village that is supposedly so blasé can get over an event that hits the heart. And what is more thrilling than a World Series, as you can undoubtedly hear in some of the celebrating noises that are coming into your loudspeakers. And the predominating hubbub from every table is, who's pitching for Brooklyn? Will Roughing stop Medwick, Walker, Camilli, Reeser and Company? It's going to be a thriller, and you know, when the pulse of New York City, which is Times Square, is beating out a staccato of Dodgers, Yankees, each of these teams is not going to let down its band of rooters. So Times Square is wearing a gala face tonight, dotted with visitors from all over the USA. Its message for America is, New York will make you forget all your troubles with a grand old game at Yankee Stadium tomorrow at 1:15 p.m. New York time. And speaking of the Yankee Stadium, no doubt you've often wondered what the guy who waited in line all night to get a good seat in the bleachers is like. Well, Mutual leaves nothing undone. So now, let's find out what it's like at Yankee Stadium. Go ahead, Frank Dunn.
I wouldn't believe it until I saw it. Usually you can say there's nothing more lonesome than a ballpark along about midnight. But tonight, that is not exactly true. For here outside the big American League Stadium, the home of the world-famous Yankees, the fans are beginning to form lines at the bleacher gate ticket windows. Thousands and thousands of World Series fans from the country over will mass into this stadium tomorrow to see the start of the World Series. Our Buns, as they are so lovingly called, or the Brooklyn Dodgers, versus that powerful team, the Yanks. All right, fellas, you can put down the clubs you're holding over my head. I'm a Brooklyn fan myself, under the circumstances. The first 75 people here in line are all Dodger fans. And speaking of baseball fans, let's get right up to the front of the line here and discuss the situation pro and con for just a bit. Standing before our mutual microphone right now is Mrs. Elizabeth Albert. Mrs. Albert is number one in line, and if she's lucky, she'll be number one in line tomorrow when the ticket window's open. Mrs. Albert, where are you from?
520 East 84th Street.
520 East 84th Street here in New York
City.
Now, is this your first World Series, or have you been on it?
This is my first series.
This is your first World Series. Now, just when did you arrive at the Yankee Stadium?
About 6 or 6:30 this evening.
Now, what are you going to do? You mean you're going to stay here all night long?
I'm going to stay here all night until the gates open in the morning.
You're going to sit right over there in number one position until the gates open in the morning.
Gates open in the morning.
Therefore, you're going to make sure that you're going to be number one.
I'm going to be number one Dodger fan.
And you're going to be number one, too, when they take out the tickets tomorrow morning. Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Albert, for your answers to questions about the World Series. Well, we've discussed the Dodgers a bit. Now, let's hear from the Yankee side here. A Yankee rooter. Here is Mr. John Gazette, B-Z-A-T. Is that correct, Mr.
That's right.
Gazette?
That's right.
Where are you from?
Hartford, Connecticut.
You're from Hartford, Connecticut, eh?
That's right.
Now, tell me something. How long have you been here?
I've been at the half past 3 this afternoon.
Half past? How come you didn't get into first place?
Woman before gentleman.
Oh, I
At the stadium.
Women before gentlemen, I see. Now, tell me something else. Is this your first World Series game?
No, it isn't.
How many
I
have
have
you
seen
seen?
almost all the Yankee World Series games.
All the Yankee, yeah. Uh-huh. Well, I've heard about people coming to the World Series days in advance, bringing with them a supply of sandwiches, setting up tents around the stadium and the like, to be sure that they can see one or more games. Sir, Zap, D-Z-A-T. You're not, perchance, one of those people, are you?
No, I'm not. I eat in a restaurant right across from the Yankee Stadium.
Well, who holds your seat while you're gone?
Dodger fan.
Oh, I see. Oh, just another question. Why do you think the Yankees are going to win the series?
Why shouldn't they? They're the power, and that's my team. Them bums in Brooklyn won't beat them.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Dezette, DCAT. You won't be alone in the Yankee rooting section. I mean, other people will be there, too. Take those clubs away, will you, fellas? Well, that's a scene from here at the Yankee Stadium for now. Now, down at Tell, Dave Driscoll is waiting to talk to the sports writers. Go ahead in the press row.
Good evening, baseball fans. We're not quite in the press room, but we're in the West Ballroom of the Commodore, where many of the writers have gathered for a late sandwich and reminisce after writing their stories on what the World Series scene is tonight. A word about the press coverage of this historic series, which gets underway tomorrow afternoon. It's a certainty that your local newspaper will have complete cover on Main Street or Broadway. There are independent and wire services of the nation, from San Francisco to Boston and from San Antonio to Winnipeg. They're here, too, from Cuba and Panama. More sports writers than New York has probably ever seen at one time. Reams of copy will pour through the teletypes of Western Union and Postal Telegraph during the next few days and filter down to your newspaper. It may be interesting to you if I mention how the press facilities are handled for the World Series. All arrangements are made by the local chapter of the Baseball Writers Association. For example, here in the Commodore Hotel, the New York writers are the hosts. Charlie Seeger of the Daily Mirror and chairman of the local chapter, and his fellow writers have done a great job. And right at this moment, Lee Scott, sports editor of Brooklyn's The Citizen, and Jimmy Woods of the Eagle are working out the arrangements for the writers when the two teams move over to Brooklyn on Friday. Speaking of Charlie Seeger, let's have a word with him. I just had a nice word for you, Charlie. Supposing you come up and say a word for us. You've done a great job here. Supposing you say a word of greeting to the listeners in who will also be reading about the World Series. How about it?
What should I say? I'm so tired. And
how long have you been working on these arrangements for the writers?
Well, we've been working about 2.5 weeks, and it doesn't seem to end. It seems every train brings some new writers in. We have them from Mexico City, Panama, Cuba, and far west and northwest of California, and we have some from North Dakota.
How many writers have you all together, do you think?
Well, there'll be about around 500 writers that have been able to get press accommodations at the stadium.
I might say you'd have been swamped if it hadn't been for those henchmen Gus Bash and Cappy Cafe who stand off the writers who swarm in for those precious buttons that get you into the press room where you can sit around and reminisce as we are tonight.
Well, you ought to know, Dave. They kept you waiting an hour.
You're not kidding. Thanks a lot, Charlie Seeger. And now let's shoot around this table for just a moment and talk to some of the writers who have gathered here in something of a board of experts. After we talk to the writers assembled here, we're going to switch down to the street at Times Square and also up to the bleacher line at Yankee Stadium and give the fans who are at those points an opportunity to ask a question or two about the series. We don't know whether the experts can answer it, but we're going to do our best. But first, before we do that, let's have a word with them. Here is Bill Lee, the sports editor of the Hartford Courant. Bill, what do you think of the World Series?
Well, I think, Dave, that this is going to be one of the greatest series ever played. And my personal pick is the Yankees to win because of their slightly stronger infield defense.
How long do you think the series will go, Bill?
I think it'll be at least a 6-game series, Dave, and it may go the full limit of 7 games.
All right, thanks a lot. Let's step over on the other side of you and talk to Harry Grayson, sports editor of NEA. Harry, how many World Series have you covered in your career?
Oh, I don't know. I've probably covered 15, 16 World Series.
Do you think that this one will stack up as one of the most exciting on the basis of pre-World Series expectations?
Well, this one would have broken all attendance records had all the games been played in Yankee Stadium or had Ebbets Field more seats. There's 30,000 seats at Ebbets Field, and they easily could play to 100,000 people there. I think one of the most stupid things I ever heard of is the Brooklyn games being played in Brooklyn when you have 40 or 50,000 more seats within a subway ride for 5 cents.
Well, maybe there's something to that. Thank you, Harry. Let's move on. By the way, as we move around the table, we might take a moment to give the weather forecast because many fans across the country, and particularly in New York, want to know what the weather is going to be like tomorrow. Originally, the forecast was for rain, but a little while ago, we called up our good friend, Dr. James H. Kimball, the chief of the Weather Bureau in New York, and he said it may rain, probably will, early in the morning, but it should be clear and windy in the afternoon with fair skies for the rest of the series later on in the week. Now, on the other side of the table, Shirley Povich of the Washington Post. Shirley, how do you think this series may turn out?
Well, Dave, some of my best friends are Brooklynites, but I still can see only the Yankees in this World Series, and if you offer me sufficient protection in the vicinity of the Gowanus, why, I'll say the Yanks in 4 straight.
Well, that's putting it right on the line. We can't ask you another question after that because it's all made up in your mind. How about Frank Gibbons of the Cleveland Press? Frank, how many World Series have you covered?
I believe this is my 6th.
What was the most exciting one you saw?
I would say the last time the Yankees beat the Reds. I would say that probably was the most exciting. That slide of DiMaggio's into the plate late in that last game at Cincinnati was really something to see. I've watched the Yankees quite a while. We in the American League are always looking for someone, of course, to beat the Yankees. And over a season's play, I think there's no question that the Yankees are a much better ball club than the Dodgers. But on spirit and drive, I think the Dodgers have a chance in this series if they can keep the ball in the park.
Attaboy. Good for you. Well, so much for the moment from the Commodore. Let's have a whack at somebody else here. Let's give someone else a whack at us. We're going to switch down now to George Hogan down in Times Square and let him bring on some of the fans who may want to ask us a question. Go ahead, George.
We're all ready to take it here. Here's a young fellow here who says he's quite a Yankee rooter. His name is Pat Hall. Well, Pat, you ask the question over there and find out what's going on.
Yeah, I'd like to know why don't the sports writers get together and just get together some plan whereby you can soothe all those disappointed Dodger rooters after the series.
Well, that's quite a question to really put into them there.
Can you make a more specific question for us?
More specific.
Anything in particular you want to know about tomorrow's game that we might be able to tell you tonight?
No, but how much of a chance do you think the Dodgers have?
Well, you've heard the experts here. They seem to agree that the Dodgers have a pretty good chance.
Well, Dave, here's the famous fan leader, Johnny Long here. He just dropped by, and he thought maybe he'd like to put a little question to you over there.
Let's have it.
All right, Johnny. What do you think about the series tomorrow? Well, just ask one of the sports writers over there anything you want to know.
Dave, who do you think I should bet on?
Well, you're putting some pretty tough questions to us. Let's get down to technicalities. Hasn't anybody a question down there that would deal with other than who's going to win?
Technicality? Wait a minute.
Well, we want to know what one of these writers might think about the starting hurlers for tomorrow's game.
Well, here's a Floridian here. He'd like to know something. What's your name?
Myers, Earl Myers.
What would you like to know about the series?
Well, I would like to know why... I can't get these earphones on.
Well, you're all propped up there.
Yeah,
Now,
I'd
like to know why.
Well, I would like to know why anyone should think that the Dodgers should win more than one game. And if they should, why would be the reason?
Harry Grayson wants to answer that.
Well, I think that the Dodgers might easily win all 4 games and 4 games in a row on pitching. A good pitching will stop any ball club, including the Yankees.
That's enough for you, brother. Let's switch up to the Yankee Stadium. Go ahead, Frank Dunn, have you got a question?
Hello, Dave. Yes, we have a question. A Yankee fan standing right here. Will you go ahead, sir?
Who picked the opening game for the Yankees?
Who picked the opening game for the Yankees? Mr. Shirley Povich. All right, what's your question?
Another question?
How many games do you think will the Yankees pick the Yankees to win the series in?
All right, Shirley's supposing the answer.
Well, I don't intend to speak for the Yankees, but I can safely say for them that if they can't win it in less than 4.
All right, I think our time is about up, so we're going to have to say that's all for baseball tonight. But tomorrow afternoon at 1:15 Eastern Standard Time, it will be play ball between the Yankees and the Dodgers at the Yankee Stadium. Don't forget the play-by-play broadcast by Bob Elson and Red Barber will flash throughout the world exclusively over the facilities of the Mutual Network. This broadcast has been presented to the WOR Special Features Division. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.